Vincent Goodwill has all the answers. Yahoo Sports senior NBA writer and host of the Good Word podcast. Is it a slight to say Kevin Durant's one of the greatest scorers of all time?
It's not a slight, Dan. It's just limiting. You know what I mean? Like when you say someone's a great scorer, you're saying that's the only thing that they're great at. Like when I say Carmelo Anthony is a great scorer, that's like the first thing that you think of. And if you take a while before you go to maybe the other things of his game, and I'm not insulting Carmelo in any way, but you think of Carmelo as a great scorer first and foremost. You think of KD, or you should think of KD as one of the greatest all-around players this league has ever seen. Unfortunately, in the era of LeBron James and Stephen Curry, you tend to limit him or discuss him in other ways a lot of times that have nothing to do with basketball.
Yeah, but I think with Steph Curry, he's the greatest shooter of all time. I don't think we talk about anything else with him. Now, granted, that's a great compliment, but if I said Steph Curry, one of the greatest scorers of all time, that would be accurate because he's not known for anything else other than being the greatest shooter in the history of the game.
I agree. And it's weird. You know what's funny is because we don't think about shooters being great players in that way when you think, maybe aside from Larry Bird, but when you thought of great shooters, you think of guys that have like a specialized skill like a Dale Ellis or someone like that. That's just a three-point shooter only, almost like a field goal kicker in a way in football. But Steph has sort of revolutionized it in a way that he is a great scorer and he is a great shooter, the greatest shooter we've ever seen. But there's so many other different parts and different facets to his game. I think with someone like KD, the conversation is so convoluted and a lot of times unfair when it comes to Kevin Durant that we're always looking for the slight when someone calls him a great scorer. We're saying, wait a minute, what about the other parts of his game? You know, like for me, Dan, I thought Kevin Durant became the league's best player in 2014 when he became the best defensive player between himself and LeBron James, except we never thought about Kevin Durant in that way. We short ourselves and we short him in the way that we discuss him. And now that he's on the back end of his career, now we're starting to hopefully acknowledge and see all the great parts of his game.
Okay. How about we look at this down the road when their careers are over with, who will be recognized as a better player, Steph Curry or Kevin Durant?
That's an excellent question, man. I think Steph Curry winning that championship in 2022 put him over the top of Kevin Durant. I think, unfortunately, this rings culture, I don't subscribe to rings culture in that sort of direct way, but I do think that Steph's ability to lead a franchise, to stay with a franchise, to stick it out with a franchise, compared to KD, who's been a little bit more mercenary, that's going to be something that people look at as a demerit. I think as a basketball player, Kevin Durant, because of what he does defensively, he's a better all-around player than Steph.
Let's look at the post-trade deadline. Jimmy Butler's contribution, impact at Golden State, and Luka's with the Lakers. Which team do you think goes further due to these two additions?
I think Jimmy Butler makes a bigger impact with the Golden State Warriors. But that's because the Golden State Warriors have such a long way to go relative to the Lakers. Like the Lakers were on a roll up until this trade, and part of that has been the schedule lightening up and LeBron coming off of his sabbatical, if that's what we're going to call it. He's coming back from that with a fresh set of legs and everything else. I think Luka is a little bit more duplication. He just does it at a higher level, and he probably has the stamina to do it for longer stretches of time than LeBron does at this stage of his career. But I don't see the Lakers having enough actual functional size and defense on the back line to make a real impact in the playoffs. I know that they've won a lot of games, and I think they're, a game and a half in the loss column of being like third in the West or second in the West or whatever it is. But I still think that size gets it done when you're talking about playing a full 7-game series. Now, when I look at Golden State, they're used to playing small, and you have someone in Draymond Green on the back line. Steph Curry has not played with a guy who can create his own shot at an elite level since he's played with Kevin Durant, and that was in 2019 was the last year those guys played together. I'm very curious to see how those two guys mesh. Jimmy going to the bucket and being able to be pass first, and Steph being able to roam around on the perimeter, having someone create shots for him, that could be scary, Dan Patrick.
Vincent Goodwill, Yahoo Sports senior NBA writer, host of the Good Word podcast. You know, a story that's kind of gone under the radar. You know, Utah's tanking, Washington's tanking. Are the Pelicans tanking? Or are they just bad?
They're incompetent. That's what that is. They're not trying to be bad. Look, Dan, look, when you're in the luxury tax, you ain't in the luxury tax because you're trying to tank. This is not a stealth tank job on the Pelicans' part. Like, yeah, they traded Brandon Ingram, but they were expecting Zion Williamson to be good this year. They acquired DeJounte Murray because they wanted to make a run. Like, on December 1st of last season, not December 1st of this season, they were the best team in the Western Conference, and they were looking at it saying, if we get healthy, if we stay healthy, we're going to be able to make some real noise because of the youth and the defense and some of the athleticism that we have. It just hasn't worked, and they're bad. And unfortunately for New Orleans, I feel like they're going to have to part ways with Zion Williamson after the season. And it's not to say that Zion can't turn it around. It's just that it feels like that relationship is going sour, and those sides cannot go on. So I don't think this is by design. They were not intending to be bad. David Griffin thought he was going to put together a team that was going to compete in the Western Conference this year.
So the coach didn't talk after the last game. The fans booed the new team governor. The former owner told fans to shut the bleep up. Fans got tossed for signs saying fire Nico. And the team lost to Sacramento. Other than that, it seems like, as Tim Kalishaw has tweeted out, everything's going well in Dallas.
Everything's going swimmingly there. Look, Dan, we can all adjudicate the Luka Doncic trade, right? And I'm not one of those people that calls it the worst trade of all time. Like when they say they traded for AD, I think there are people are trying to say that they traded for Antonio Davis in 1994 or something like that. Like Anthony Davis is one of the top 10 players in basketball. But I think that it's been a stroke of bad luck for a franchise that is so connected to Luka. They're more connected to Luka Doncic than they were to the actual Dallas Mavericks. And that's something that you generally, Dan, incorporate with losers. Like, I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was a fan of the Detroit Lions. And then July 27th, 1999 happened. And I was no longer a fan of the Detroit Lions. And I have not gone back since. Why? Because they were losers. And then when they made Barry Sanders quit, I quit them. Dallas has won a championship, and they went to the finals. Those fans should not be bailing, even though I understand their anger and frustration. But this is a bit shocking, the reaction from everyone. Death threats to Nico Harrison? That's a bit wild to me.
If you gave Nico a do-over, a mulligan right now, today.
I think given the fact that we don't know the extent of Anthony Davis's injury, this core muscle injury that he has, you might give him a mulligan based off of that, not necessarily based off of the reaction. Usually you can ride out the reaction, and I think he was confident enough to say, we've got some bigs here that can really make some things happen in the Western Conference if we get them all healthy and upright. I don't think people as strong-minded as Nico Harrison are going to be swayed that quickly because of the reaction. He could be swayed because of Anthony Davis's health, not because everybody is so heartbroken and betrayed over Luka Doncic.
Always great to talk to you, Vincent. Thanks for joining us.
Next time I'll be on video, Dan.
Oh, yeah, that's what our audience wants. The ladies love that. The ladies want that.